You are listening to Ordinary Eccentrics. I'm Courtney Lofton, and together we'll uncover the extraordinary lives of ordinary people. Let's hop into it.
Okay. So see you. Turning off. Okay. So Alice, thank you for joining the podcast, Ordinary Eccentrics. I will have you start just by introducing yourself, first and last name.
Yeah, hi, I'm Alice Ye, and I'm happy to be here.
And where were you born and raised?
I was born in Philadelphia, and I grew up outside, in a small suburb town in New Jersey, outside of Philly.
Okay, cool. So you're born in Philadelphia, grew up in New Jersey,
Yes,
mostly.
that's right.
Okay.
Yes.
What is it like? What was it like, I guess, growing up on the East Coast? Like, is New Jersey, I think of New Jersey as like kind of like New York, but so is it like that, or is it like, what was it like for you growing up? Did you feel like you were in a big city?
No, I didn't feel like I was in a big city. I like to describe New Jersey as basically an extension of New York,
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania, or Philadelphia, I should say. Extension of Philadelphia, New York, or you have the Jersey Shore. So it's like
Yeah.
that's what I would qualify as like the three regions of the state.
Okay, I'm really glad I'm talking to someone from New Jersey and that you mentioned the Jersey Shore because someone was talking to me about polar plunges. And like I know like polar plunge is like a big thing like on every New Year's you just run into the ocean at the shore. Is that a thing? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I haven't heard of
Okay.
that. I didn't grow up on the coast, so
Okay.
but why not?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I just was like, why do people do that? And like, we couldn't understand why. So, so I was like, maybe it's a New Jersey thing. I don't know.
Well, I have heard of polar plunges for people who go to Antarctica or even in
Yeah,
the near the North Pole, I think. But
yeah,
maybe when you said polar
not New
plunges, that's what I
Jersey.
was thinking of.
So, what was life like for you then growing up in New Jersey?
It was, I think, a typical suburb life. I am Taiwanese American, so I guess I do have a little bit of the Asian American background in terms of growing
Mhm.
up. So maybe not a typical typical childhood as other people, but yeah, I don't think it was anything very specific that was different than I think what most people grow up with, where your parents tell you to do well in school and be good and treat people well and things like that.
Yeah. If you had your friends or your teachers had to describe you, like not like grade school, but maybe like junior high or high school, how would you do you think they'd describe you?
I have heard people say I'm very smart and scrappy and resourceful, so
Mm.
very adaptable in terms of seeing situations and figuring things out. And I think that does come a little bit from my childhood background in terms of being Asian American and adapting to
Hmm.
different situations and doing that from a young age too. So that's kind of a skill I've developed over the years.
Yeah. Could you speak more to that, just like the adaptability piece, like those skills that you got from a young age?
Yeah. So I think from a young age, I've always been interested in the world or the outside world.
Hmm.
I read a lot of books. I dreamed a lot, and books were an escape for me. And I think that
Mm.
translated to real life, where I was always interested in what was going on in the world, what places I could go.
Mm.
And with that, I developed this skill where in different situations, I am pretty good at reading a room and reading between the lines of what people are saying or doing,
Hmm.
and being able to use that uh, to either solve problems or read situations and just really understand what's going on. And that I think translated to the workplace, where I was able to be really resourceful and working with what I have to get things done.
Yeah.
And I think with all of that, that also allowed me to really want to take risks, because I was able to adapt quickly and adjust as needed.
And you said you're Taiwanese American,
Yes, that's
right?
right.
Can you share more about just culturally, like what are some of the things that you grew up with that may have been different from like another household?
Yeah, so Taiwan is a small island off the coast of China.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so growing up, I would say my dinners were family meals of Chinese food.
Mm.
And I think that's
Like
pretty different
homemade
than
Chinese food?
your yeah, yeah,
Nice.
exactly. Yeah, so my mom would
Okay.
cook meals every night. And we always That was a run rule in our house. We always had to have dinner together as a family.
Oh,
And there was no device like well back then there was really not no such thing as devices,
yeah.
but we
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
have TV going on in the background. And yeah, I think that was one of the things where that was the one time of the day where we were together as a family
Yeah. Do you have
to talk about
siblings?
our day and what was going on. Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
younger brother. He's 4 years
Okay.
younger than me.
Nice. So, okay, like being the older sibling, do you feel like you were the more responsible one? Is that kind of where some of this adaptability do you think comes from?
Yeah, I think so. I think as the older sibling, there's a lot of pressure put on by parents to be the one who takes care of everything
Yeah.
and has everything already in place and takes care of the younger brother or sister and
No,
just makes sure
totally.
and just helps out the parents. So I definitely think that helped contribute to that.
I get that because I'm the youngest sibling, and so I've just like have no sense of responsibility, and like I recognize very much that I've like allowed my older siblings to step up for me and like help me and take care of me. And so like I don't understand, but I do understand like the plight of the older sibling to like take on responsibility and the pressure, right, to perform and to do well and to be responsible. Like, how did you cope with that growing up?
I'm not sure if I really coped. It was just something that I just did because that's
Yeah.
what was expected. I think it wasn't really until later in life where I really thought about how that translated to certain things I do. And I've definitely developed perfectionist tendencies.
Mhm.
Not only I think just from the upbringing, but also just that pressure to perform and be responsible. And so yeah, so that took a lot of years to kind of, or not years, but a lot of experiences to kind of
Mhm.
unwind that a little bit.
Yeah. Have you had experiences with failure and just like what experiences I guess kind of helped you get out of that or even recognize it?
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the first things that really what I in my head call as like a big failure is when I was in high school and in elementary school. I was the perfect straight A student and
Mhm.
doing really well in school. And then I did end up at an Ivy League university. And while I was there, I remember getting my first C, and that was such a shock to me. And I thought the world was going to end, and my parents are going to disown me, and I was going to fail out of school.
Yeah.
So I think that was my first time really encountering that sense of failure or a setback.
Mhm.
And I realized that I hadn't throughout all of my childhood, I hadn't really failed enough. And so college became this experience or this time where now that I was like, well, I mean, there are two ways I think people kind of react from that kind of experience. One is I need to work even harder to get even better
Mhm.
grades, or you go the opposite way, which is what I did, which is like, okay, well, I got that first C. Now anything can go, anything can happen,
Yeah.
and I don't have to
Yes.
be perfect anymore.
Yes, it's like
Um,
you break the
so I
kind of glass wall around you. It's like, okay, actually, I'm gonna be fine.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of that's definitely the sense I've taken through my approach in life is just to, okay, now that I've failed or encountered setbacks, it's not that bad. And it's what do I
Yeah,
make of it? And how do I turn this around and make an opportunity out of it now?
totally. Wait, where did you go to school?
I went to Princeton.
Okay, cool. I went to Columbia, so Not as prestigious.
Still good school.
Still a really good school. Lots of competition and like again, I pretty much word for word had the same experience as you. I got my first C and was just like I felt like the stupidest person on campus. I was just like I don't know what I'm doing. Like I was freaking out, and then I was just like, wait. My parents were like, calm down, like like just calm down. And like once I kind of gained perspective that I was learning and like that I was there to learn, it helped me cope with failure and like this idea of perfectionism, very type A, wanting to get everything done and do it right. And it's like not gonna burst into flames if you don't get everything right. Like it's like there's so much more to learn from the failure than it is always like getting it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And when I think about my life from then on, I have definitely seen a lot of setbacks and failures. And I'm like, okay, how do I turn this around? How
Yeah.
do I make this a learning opportunity?
I want to hear more about what college was like for you in at an Ivy League school on the East Coast with all the different things that go on. Like, what was your experience like at Princeton?
I really loved the school and the experience that I had there. It was an opportunity to really explore. After that first C, then I would really took the experience of exploring what I liked, what I wanted to do, and just tried a lot of different things. And I think college, or you take classes in different areas, learn about, I think I took a class on linguistics and where language comes from. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's ever going to be useful in life, but it was a very interesting class. And I think that was one of the things I really enjoyed, where I had that opportunity to take classes in these subjects and topics that were just interesting and didn't necessarily have
Yeah,
to translate to something.
exactly. Yeah. And it makes me curious how you've gotten into life coaching, which is kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
just like, can you
So
explain that track?
yeah. So I was, I think, around, yeah, it was actually around this time last year where I've been in the corporate world for about 14 years at this point,
Mm-hmm.
in a variety of roles, with from finance to big tech to startups.
Yep.
I live in San Francisco, so
Oh,
later
nice.
my career later was more heavily around the tech scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I was feeling stuck and kind of bored with my
Mm-hmm.
life and unsure what to do next. I felt like I had followed this path of what you were supposed to do: get good grades, go to a good
Yep.
school, get good jobs. And then I was just kind of like, is this really it? That's it. I don't feel fulfilled or excited about my
Yeah.
life. And so
Yeah.
I had worked with a life coach at that time to help me figure out what to do with my life, to kind of figure out the next steps,
Mm-hmm.
or something to make it more exciting. And through my work with her, I learned a lot more about myself, and realized that I had this dream that I wanted to start my own business. But living here in San Francisco, I thought people only started businesses if you have this innovative, brand new idea that no one's ever thought of before. And so I realized that that's not necessarily true. And when I looked at all of my experiences from the corporate world, the thing that I enjoyed the most was really around the mentorship and working with people and helping them solve their problems and figure out how to move forward. And that translated naturally, I think, to coaching. And so I decided I wanted to explore coaching a bit more. And so I started looking into coaching certification programs. And what's funny is that as soon as I made this decision to start looking into coaching as a path, I was laid off a couple weeks later, and so I took
Oh,
it as a sign from the
good.
universe to kind of go all in on this journey. And yeah, that's how I became a life coach.
Love it. So. I want to go back to you're living in you still live in San Francisco.
Yes, I do.
Cool. Where I lived in San Francisco for 2 years, and something about it is like it makes me so like existential melancholy feel. Maybe it's the fog or something, but I'm always like, what am I really doing? Like, what purpose do I have? Like, I've never more deeply questioned my purpose and my life's meaning than the 2 years I lived in San Francisco.
I think there's something in the air here where everyone feels like that. And I think everyone wants to do something with their life that has meaning. And that's why there's all
Yeah.
these startups, all these ideas, and people just going for it and taking risks and trying these businesses.
It has to be something in the air. And like I think too about the history, like so many musicians would go to San Francisco and it was just a city that was always rebuilding and like it had the huge earthquake and it had to rebuild from that. So like yeah, it's just like very much a city of cycles and growth.
Yes, definitely. I've been here almost 10 years now, and I have seen some of those cycles. And
Yeah.
right now we're definitely at the end of one, I think. Hopefully.
Have you ever wanted to leave or move and try something else?
I have sort of. So when I moved out here after business school.
Mhm.
Um, and I was working. I moved out here to work at Google, and I was
Mhm.
at Google for 4 years. Um, and when I was at Google, I was actually, I mean, I was happy or excited the first few years, but there was a point where I reached a bit of a ceiling, and
Mm.
I was trying so hard to get promoted or switch roles within the company, but nothing really excited me, or I for whatever reason couldn't get the role. There was always someone else
Mhm.
who was a better fit. And I don't think I've ever felt so unworthy during
Mm.
my time there, especially near the end, where no matter what I did, it just felt like I wasn't enough. And
Mhm.
I realized it wasn't me, it was the company. And
Yeah.
so at some point, and in my head, I was thinking, well, Google is supposed to be one of the best companies to work with at that time. And
Mhm.
I felt really frustrated. Like, why can't I make this work? There must be something wrong with me. If I do leave Google, what do I do?
Mhm.
I've checked all the boxes of life, and I'm not sure what I would do next.
Mhm.
And what actually ended up happening is I got laid off because they reorged my team. And so I had the option to stay, but to find another role within the company, I think I had like a couple months to do that.
Mhm.
But I decided I wanted to actually, unlike most people who were in the same position as I was, they all decided to stay,
Mhm.
from the because mostly because of the golden handcuffs, as people say, with the packages and benefits
Like the perks
that
and
Google
benefits, I
has.
know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Everyone always
So
says Google has the best cafeteria.
it was pretty good at the time. I don't know about now anymore with all
Yeah.
the layoffs that they've been doing and cuts.
Yeah.
But I decided to go against the grain, and I
Mhm.
left the company.
Love it.
And when I made the decision to leave, I actually had nothing planned. I decided I wanted to take some time off and essentially take a sabbatical and do all the things I wanted to do, but hadn't had time for. And I ended up taking almost a year off. And during
Mhm.
this time, I traveled. I went to Costa Rica to learn Spanish. I went to Bali to do yoga teacher training. I also did Reiki certification when I was in Bali. Um, I traveled around Australia. So I basically spent this year, I called it my eat, pray, slay journey instead of eat,
Love.
pray, love.
Yeah.
And basically just did a whole bunch of things that fueled my personal growth and learning.
Mhm.
And I felt so happy and so fulfilled during this year. Everyone at that time told me I was crazy to leave Google, that having a gap on your resume is like the worst thing you can do, and it'll be so hard for me to find a job once I'm back. And I was just
Mhm.
like, I'm just gonna follow my instincts, and things will work out. I'm
Yeah.
sure I can still find a job, and I took this year off, and it was one of the best decisions of my life, and one of the best years that I had.
Was that just recently, or that was when you left Google?
That was when I left Google, so that was in 2018, so a couple years
Okay.
ago.
And when you
And
got back from
yeah,
that
and
trip, then yeah, tell us the rest of the saga.
yes, the rest of the saga. So yeah, so when I came back, and during this time, I had really thought about what I wanted to do next, and I decided I was done with a very large company. I wanted to work at a smaller startup or a smaller company where I would have more flexibility and the opportunity to do more than just my role and be part of the process of building a company. And so when I came back, I interviewed around. I ended up at a hospitality startup called Sonder, and I was there for almost a year until COVID.
Mm.
And being in the travel hospitality industry, there were a lot of layoffs. So I was laid off. And then I was able to find another role in a retail tech space.
Mhm.
And that's how I ended up at a even smaller company, earlier stage startup called Zipin. Their technology is essentially a competitor of Amazon Go for cashier
Mm.
free technology. And I was there for about 3 years,
Okay.
almost 4 years actually. And that's where I most recently got laid off last year. So from there, I have now made the jump to life coaching.
Nice. The layoffs, like tech layoffs, are kind of like really sweet because you get a severance and you just get your time back, right?
They are if you are at a large company like Google.
Okay.
For the smaller companies like startups, they don't have as much of a severance. There is still severance, but it's not as
Right.
the package is not as generous as the big
Yeah.
companies.
Okay, fair. I'm looking at Zaven Group. That's cool. So, and so you've had this that year kind of sabbatical, eat, pray, slay. I love that. I love that year. And then you went back to work, and it sounds like the universe kept telling you, no, no, and like you're getting like sort of pushed through work and other things towards this life coaching.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah,
I
tell me more.
yes, yeah, I agree. I feel like I was moving in this direction, whether I realized it or not, through the choices I made in terms of looking for work that was more meaningful or impactful. And each corporate role I had it for a little bit, but I always reached a ceiling or some wall at some point where it felt
Hmm.
like there was more I could do, and I just wasn't feeling it within that company.
Hmm.
Um, and I think a lot of it is that you as a person evolve and outgrow things. And I think that's what happened really with me. As I learned more about myself and figured out more and more about what it is that I really wanted to do. And now with
Yeah.
life coaching, I find so much more meaning and purpose in terms of being able to actually actively help and impact people on a daily direct basis.
Yeah.
Um, and so it just feels a lot more meaningful. I feel like I have more impact, and I'm learning also myself every day. So
Yeah.
um, it really aligns with my core values and my beliefs, I think.
Yeah. And I love that. And I feel like life coaching is so rewarding. And the coaching part is great. But the business part of it and like having to do marketing and reach potential clients and like get new clients is at least has been for me really difficult and like the part I'm not as interested in. So how has it been for you and like I bet basically starting your own business?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I am learning a lot,
Yeah.
and yeah, it is not easy. I'm also still figuring out how to get clients, how to market myself, and how to make this work. Still haven't quite figured it out yet, but I'm doing what I can to get my message out there, and that's
Yeah.
why I'm interested in doing podcasts like this, where I can talk about my experience and things I've gone through, and maybe that will resonate with somebody
Totally.
and find that helpful.
Have you discovered your niche yet, or are you still kind of putting feelers out?
I think my niche is helping. It's not surprisingly people that were in my shoes a couple of years ago, or
Mm-hmm.
what I had gone through. So essentially, high achieving mid career professionals who feel
Right.
stuck and bored with their life, and kind of have this sense of dread about work,
Yeah.
but they can't quite figure out what to do next. And so I help them figure out what their life and career vision looks like, and how
Mm.
to overcome any fears, really understand themselves, and how to align that vision with where they currently are. So in order to kind of find a more fulfilling and purposeful life and career.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I feel. Like I feel like I need that coaching all the time because I feel purpose and then I feel distracted and then I'm like questioning it all, and then to not have the safety net of work is also really scary. And so like I guess I'm just curious how or what keeps you motivated to keep
Yeah,
going
for
and doing all
me,
this. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and I think for me, it's really going back to my why. And I think this is where it's applicable not just to me, but to most
Mhm.
people, where you have to really understand why you're doing something, what your motivations are. Because it's so easy to, like you said, get distracted or get bored and
Mhm.
unmotivated. So for me, my why for coaching is that I'm helping people. It's rewarding. I have a sense of meaning and purpose in terms of being able to help people find their passion and fulfillment. And that to me is really rewarding. And
Mhm.
on the other side of that, from the business perspective, running my own business allows me to have the freedom to to essentially run the business. I remember when I was working in various corporate roles, there's always the bureaucracy to deal with,
Mhm.
the politics of the office. If you have disagreements with management or leadership, there wasn't really much you could do about it. You just had to put your head down and go with it. But now with running my own business, I essentially get to call the shots, and that's freedom that I really like and
Yeah.
enjoy, and that's what keeps me going.
Nice. And then the business component of it, where it's like, it's not just coaching, it's like practical skills and a lot of discipline. Do you feel like your work history and like your, I guess your high achievement history kind of already sets you up well for that? Or do you still feel like there's a learning curve of like all the management side of life coaching?
I think I have some advantages in terms of my work history and that high achievement history.
Hmm.
But it definitely is still a learning curve. I do have to be very disciplined. It's very easy to just somehow the day passes and nothing gets done. But yeah, I really have to be very disciplined in terms of, okay, this is the three things I need to do today, and I have to get them done.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it definitely takes discipline, and being very organized. And I think my planning and organizational capabilities or skills that I developed over years very helpful with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think learning some of the sales tactics and marketing tactics, those are definitely new to me, and it's still a learning curve for me as well.
Right. Because it's like, it basically is like you need to be creating content. and like be a content creator to market yourself and attract new clients. I almost feel like there is no way that you cannot be posting yourself in some way, shape, or form on social media if you want to be in life coaching. Like, tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think there has to be a way for you to get your message out, what you stand for, how you help people, and that is marketing.
Yeah.
Now marketing, everyone's on social media, so that makes sense. It does make it very noisy, and so
Mhm.
yeah, have to figure out how to make yourself stand out, and that's the part where I'm still figuring it out.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm also exploring other things like what can I do locally or in person? I think
Yes.
there's a bit of a fatigue with online as well, given the COVID years where everything was done online. So there
Yeah.
seems to be a trend for or a desire for more in-person events now.
Yes, that's really good. And you're in a big city that's like people are open to that.
Yes, that's yeah. I haven't quite figured out what I'm gonna do, but it's
Yeah.
something I've been thinking about.
I owned a small like clothing boutique in my hometown for a couple years, and then before, like this is years ago, and now that I'm in business again for myself, I feel like the hardest thing to do is to promote myself. And it's like I know what like if it I even have a hard time like depersonalizing and like writing materials for myself, like selling myself. Do you find that
Mhm.
hard, like to sell yourself?
I did a little bit in the beginning, but this is where I've kind of put that aside or just pushed it to the back of my head and just really pushed through that feeling
Hmm.
of talking about myself. And the reason why or how I did this is I thought about what I really believed in. I truly believe and think that life is too short and people spend way too much time at a job they hate or don't
Yeah.
like. And that takes up quite a big portion of our time. That's like one third of your day during the weekday that you're
Yeah.
at work.
Yeah.
And so for me, I feel that I would be doing a disservice by not helping people find jobs that they actually like or find a way to make their life more meaningful if I don't advertise myself or put myself
Right.
out there, because that's how I can help people. And so that's what pushes me and motivates me to
Yeah.
kind of set my feelings aside and think about that.
That's awesome. Like really just telling your story because there is someone out there listening right now who's like, I hate my job. I've been here 7 years, and like I haven't left, don't know what I want to do, or has a hard time leaving. What advice would you give to someone who is in that position of they're at work, they have a good life, they've done the things they've wanted, they've achieved what they wanted to achieve, and now they're like, now what? Like, do they just
Yeah.
quit and try something new? Do they move across the country? Like, what do you think? What would you say is like the first step when you get to that now what feeling?
Yeah, I think that now what feeling is the best time to really take a deep inward look at yourself, to really think about what actually motivates you, what gets you excited to get up in the morning, what you're passionate about, and what makes you, yeah, what's motivating you.
Mhm.
Um, and I think a lot of people don't actually know the answer to these questions,
Yeah.
because they go
I was
through
just gonna say, what if
life.
they don't know?
Yeah. So that's where I think a lot of journaling, for me personally, I have found journaling helpful.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's really just understanding yourself a bit more and doing things to do that. So there's maybe activities, hobbies that people may have that help them feel like they are excited or motivated. So understanding what the why, like what about
Mhm.
those activities make you happy
Mm.
or interested, and try to find the common theme around all of those things. And that's where usually you can figure out what motivates you and what you value. And what drives you. So I think when you think about things you like and you really dig into the why do you like it, that's how you
Mhm.
can start to see common threads.
Mm.
And those common threads can start to build a picture of what it is that you personally like and want. And that can help inform kind of the vision of what to do next.
Nice. And did you have this experience when you were working with a life coach and that sort of helped you make some of the decisions that you made?
Yeah, definitely. Through the life coach that I worked with, I did a core values exercise. I learned more about what it was about the roles that I've done in the past that I liked and didn't like, and what were the reasons behind that. And that's how I was able to pick out with their problems and helping them problem solve to figure out their next steps. So that was always the common theme that I
Mhm.
realized throughout all of the experiences that I had, both within the corporate world and outside of it. And that's how I thought that coaching would be a natural fit to take those experiences of what I liked and my strengths,
Yeah.
in order to marry the two together.
And you have this background of yoga and Reiki as well. I really
Yes.
want to hear more about that because obviously I'm in Bali now. I did my yoga teacher training here about 5 years ago and never really used it. Like I use it very much for myself, like to help with self-discovery. But I'm really curious, like how you have used yoga since training and Reiki, and yeah, what that experience is like.
Yeah, same as you. I really went into the yoga teacher training and the Reiki certification more for myself than to actually want to be a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
Um, and I definitely was able to learn a lot more about myself and my body and the
Mhm.
spiritualness as well. What I've done with that since, I haven't done much. I've still kept up with yoga and I feel that I can do the classes that I'm participating in well. But also I am able to challenge myself as well by taking more advanced classes since I know the basics.
Mhm.
Um, and I would say the only thing I've really done with the yoga teacher training is I have led yoga classes at Burning Man
Oh,
for my
cool.
camp. So that was the
Yeah.
one thing I've done in terms of yoga teaching.
Do you feel like it plays a role in your life coaching, or will it somehow work its way in there, or not so much?
I haven't really thought about it, mostly because there's so many yoga teachers here in the Bay Area.
Mhm.
So it's not something I feel I would really stand out with. But it is something I have thought about in terms of in the future, if I ever do workshops or retreats, then that can be something I can also lead with or add as a
Right.
benefit or offering. But yeah, it's not something I've really thought about leveraging too much.
That makes sense, and it's so such a personal journey that I think w- even like if you're not teaching someone yoga, like you having practiced yoga and like done the teacher training, like changes you as a person and like makes you more present. All these things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to talk about that where it has definitely made me more present, much more aware of my body. And now when I hear people complain about, back problems or neck problems, I'm like, "Oh, maybe you can do some of these moves that can help
Yeah.
relieve some of those symptoms." So, I have used it in that way. When it comes to life coaching, I do think that there is a connection between obviously the body and the mind, very strong
Mhm.
connection. And so when I work with clients and they talk about, obviously they come to me first with career where they are
Mhm.
unhappy with their careers, but there's always these other areas in their life that where that's being affected, and health is usually a big part of that, where
Mhm.
people don't make time for exercise, working out. Their diet habits are pretty bad because they're stress eating
Yeah.
or whatever. And so that's the reason why I prefer to be kind of a holistic life coach, because I do
Yeah.
think that these other areas of life are important to work on as well, in addition to the career. And the stress and unhappiness of the career definitely bleeds into other areas of life. And I do think my background with yoga and Reiki helps around that as well, when I work with clients
Yeah.
around thinking about life as in terms of a more holistic view.
And like the energy part of it too, like Reiki, I know, like I don't know much about Reiki, but I know it's like using stones to like clear energy. Actually, could you tell me more about like what Reiki is and
Yeah,
like what a typical
Reiki's
Reiki
about
session's like?
Reiki is it is around energy, and it's around this philosophy that there's energy in everything, in the outside world.
Hmm.
And in a Reiki session, the person would channel the energy from nature, or the world, the space around you,
Hmm.
to the body to help clear out essentially the bad energy, or there may be some injuries. The energy can help make those better.
Hmm.
And so yeah, it's definitely a little more spiritual and more out there. Not everyone will believe in that, but yeah, I do think that there
Yeah.
is energy in everything, and everything is connected. And so Reiki is a way to kind of channel that and help repair some of those issues that you may have within your body and mind.
Yes. And like, so like it's twofold because like yoga helps move around energy in the body. And I know like one of the things we learned is like you hold emotions in our muscles and in our body. And like if we have like tension in places, it could be like held emotions, held energy. But then the Reiki part of it, because everything is matter, like everything is made, basically saying like this energy can be moved around.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
I like that. I believe it. I haven't never had Reiki done to me, but I had recently had a friend who did, and like she even said like the stone that the practitioner used was heavier at the end of the session because it had been like absorbing negative energy.
Yeah. Well, you're in Bali, so Bali, I did my Reiki certification there. Bali is definitely one of the places I've been where you can feel the energy in the air. It is different
Mhm.
in in that environment. It's really hard to describe until you visit. For
Mhm.
people who've never been before, there is just something in the air that feels electric or magical. And
Yeah.
so I have found that when I have done or had Reiki sessions done there versus elsewhere, it was much stronger in Bali.
Mm.
And so, yeah, maybe that's something for you to explore while you're there.
Yeah, I know. I keep saying I need to do it, and now I feel like speaking with you is definitely another nudge for me to seek it out because it's something I've talked about, but I haven't like really done any looking for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of the spas usually offer it as a
Yeah.
service
But then I just start
alongside,
having trust
massages.
issues because I'm like, I want it to be real. I want it to be, and I don't even know what that means for it to be real or good or whatever, but I want it to be like, I want it to be an experience. And then I feel like my expectations get so high. Maybe that's why I'm
Yeah.
just anxious about it, actually.
Well, what
Have you, yeah,
I guess
you can
no.
coach me the last 10 minutes. You could ask some questions.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking what I guess what expectations do you have with Reiki? It sounds like there's something around there.
Yeah, I feel like I want to walk out of it feeling different and feeling like unknown parts of me are now healed.
Mhm. And if it doesn't,
I,
what would you do, or how would you react to that?
I think I would feel very disappointed and I would be like, is it real? I would just make me start questioning things. But then at the same time, I don't, because I have these expectations, I also don't want to like overdo it and be like, yeah, I definitely felt something. For example, I had a massage here and the massage was like, I need like deep tissue, like deep massage. and the massage is literally just like rubbing oil on my back. And I got increasingly more angry over the course of this
Mm-hmm.
massage because it was not what I was wanting or expecting. And like that's what makes me reluctant about Reiki. And sometimes I even go to yoga classes where I'm like, oh, this is not what I was expecting, and it just bugs me.
And what do you do after that in terms of, that feeling of disappointment? Or is there anything you learn or take away from that experience?
I my parents do this too. I have this expression that I X things, and so I'd be like X, like I X that massage parlor. Maybe I wouldn't X Reiki as a whole, but I'd be like never going back. And it's like the only thing I have control over is to never go back or see them again or whatever. But it's very extreme, and I feel like it all comes from like these high expectations and like really wanting to feel different.
Yeah. But I think that's okay to have expectations and want something out of that experience. But I think what you just said is that you wouldn't necessarily discount to Reiki, but you wouldn't go back to that spa or whatever service, whoever is providing it.
Mhm.
And maybe it was the practitioner itself.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned it with yoga. It's if it's a yoga class that you don't like, you're not going to go back to that teacher again. So I think Reiki is the same. It's not necessarily for everyone, but also maybe that person or practitioner or the spa that you're going to is not the right fit for you. And
Yeah.
it's another,
And it's
like you said, maybe
okay.
it's another way to, and it's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
And
Because my other thing is like, it's almost like a failure. Like I made a bad decision. If I have an experience where it's like, I'm disappointed, I like take it on myself of like, well, you made a bad decision. Like, there you go. You've got to learn. And then it's like, I'm someone who will spend so much time reading reviews on things and researching. And so it feels to me almost like getting that C, like that first C, at freaking Calc 3, I remember with the class. But anyway, but it's like that sense of like, oh, fail. Why did I do this? Like, how did I get this so wrong? Like, I get disappointed in myself too.
yeah, no, that's natural, and it's okay to feel that. I definitely remember feeling that with my C as well, or even with restaurants, like you were talking when you talked about reading
Mhm.
reviews and things like that. But if I personally have a bad experience, it's not necessarily on me, like a restaurant. It's just that experience, or it's just that place is not for me, despite what the reviews say. So
Yeah. But do
um
you ever feel like, oh, I wasted my time or I wasted my money or whatever? Like I'm never gonna get that
sometimes
hour back.
sometimes, but you learn from it. And like you, I
Yeah.
would decide that I'm not going back there.
Yeah. One of the things I got from life coaching, I like through Jay Shetty School, we have like the coaching hours, and so I was getting coached. Someone told me to have an angry thoughts journal because I have been like such on the like positivity train to the point of like being toxic positivity of like being positive even though like it's a shitty situation. Like, oh, this restaurant was disgusting, but like, oh, at least we got to spend an hour together. Like, I'd always like look for something good, and then it became hard for me to to actually express distaste or like to be disappointed, and I would just hold all of these angry thoughts in, and that just kind of eats you up from the inside out. So now I have an angry thoughts journal that I let it rip in when I'm upset about.
Yeah, I think it's normal and healthy to feel your emotions,
Yeah.
whether it's anger or disappointment. And yes, looking on the bright side of things when things go wrong is also helpful to react to that. But yes, I do see your point of it can get to a point where it's not healthy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a question of figuring out what works for you and what makes sense for you.
And that's like, well, just decision making in general, I think to go back to like someone who's in the workplace and thinking about making a change, it's hard to like get to that point of like making the decision, pulling the trigger or pressing the button or whatever to do something that drastically different than what you've already been doing, like leaving a job or moving across the country or anything. So, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are afraid because of like they don't want to be get that failure feeling of
Yeah.
oh, I made the wrong decision.
Yeah. And that's normal. I think in situations like that, it is important to remember or think about what you can learn from those experiences and how you can take that learning to move forward. And being afraid to fail is definitely really common feeling because nobody likes that.
Yeah.
But as you and I have talked about, from sometimes those experiences have been huge learning experiences for us. So it's something to keep in mind around failures, and being able to learn from those is really where a lot of growth can happen.
Yeah.
I would say for people who are still unsure or unable to really talk through or understand what they're thinking or wanting to do, it is helpful to talk to a third person, whether it's a coach
Mhm.
or a mentor or somebody to help figure that out. Sometimes we get so caught up in our thoughts and our heads that um, it's helpful to get a third person perspective.
Yeah. I I agree with that, and I wish that I had done that when I was younger, but like, everything happens for a reason. But you think, like, I think like fear of failure is like you feel like you're jumping off of a cliff, like into like an unknown abyss, and you don't know how far down you're going to go. Actually, failing is just like taking one step down and then maybe another step down, and like you're at the end of the stairs, and then you can go up somewhere else or keep going other places. And for me, when I was failing, I think I could have used the help of a life coach to kind of help me guide my decision making, but instead I just kind of I saw the stairs, and instead of taking the steps of failure down one at a time, I just throw myself down the flight of stairs into new experiences and into new things. And it's like you don't have to do that either. Like it is like
Yeah.
that is the beautiful benefit of having someone like a life coach who's there for the practical things in life, not like a psychiatrist, psychologist, but someone who's going to walk you through just like the everyday stuff that comes up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm like you. I wish I had started working with coaches earlier in my life. I had only worked with a coach for first time last year. So yeah, so I agree that there are definitely some things that looking back, I'm like, oh, I could have avoided all that stress and wasted time really if I
Yeah,
if I had worked with a coach. But it's still a learning experience, and from that I'm like, oh, okay, I know how to short circuit or shortcut these things now.
right. That's exactly it. And it's like you can either learn on your own from your mistakes and all of the experiences that we have, or like have someone to help guide you and just make the transitions a little easier.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a really good pitch for life coaching. I'm saving this thought pattern. It's like, yes, you can do life on your own, but it will be less painful if you have a coach,
Yes, and
basically.
the things can be a little bit more smoothly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said.
Any
Instead of
final
taking, yeah,
advice?
instead of
Yeah.
taking that leap into. Oh yeah, no, I was just building off what you said. Instead of taking that leap off into the unknown, you can work with a coach to take it step by step and make it less
Love
scary
that.
and
Yeah.
less fearful.
Yes. Could not agree more. Do you have any final words of advice for someone who's listening who may be at their job right now thinking, yes, I want to make a change, but don't know the first place to start? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I would say if you are looking to make a change but you don't know where to start, I would start with looking inward and What I had mentioned earlier is really truly understanding yourself. One of the frameworks I really like to work with is something called Ikigai, which is a Japanese framework for finding purpose. But it really looks at really understanding your strengths, your values, and what your passions are, what you're motivated by, essentially. And then the last part is what the world needs, but I prefer to think of it as what you can help the world with. Or instead of what you can be paid for, I like to think it more as what you can help the world with. And so, with those four things, really understanding yourself and those four areas can help you find a clearer picture of what could be a natural next step for you if you don't know where to go.
Ikigai.
And there is a book around this, Ikigai.
That's great. All right. Thank you so much for hopping on and joining me. Great conversation. Thanks for some of the coaching advice too, because I definitely need that.
Yeah, no, happy to be here. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for joining us today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and join us in our next conversation where we'll be exploring the extraordinary lives of ordinary people. I'm Courtney Lofton, and this is Ordinary Eccentrics.